Good morning. Welcome to A Soft Place to Land. Hi, my name is Hope, and we've got a special treat for you. As promised, we've got a special guest. We're going to be talking about mental health. Our special guest is Brian Stout, and it looks like he's in the back room, and let's go ahead and let him join. Just waiting for him to join now. I hope everyone is feeling well this morning and you're going to have a great day. As you know, A Soft Place to Land is a support group, and we are a community that supports one another in the issues of life. Looks like Brian is having trouble getting in. Good morning, Brian. Good morning. Turn your device. There you go. There you go. How are you this morning?
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm
Well,
good. I'm good. I'm good. Um, Welcome to A Soft Place to Land. It's great to have you here today.
thank you for allowing me to be on your platform.
Awesome, awesome. Um, so let's jump right into a couple of things. First, I'd like to do what I've seen one of the content creators do, and I kind of like it. Let's do a little bit of human verification. So here's the question: cereal or milk first?
Oh, it's always cereal first.
Awesome,
Always.
awesome. Thanks to Kojo at Little Black Book 91. That is his normal opening, and I kind of like it. So,
Okay.
Brian, let's get started. Let's get started. Um, First, let's get a little bit about who you are today. Then we're going to do some go backwards. Who is
Okay.
Brian
Today,
today? Who is Brian?
today, Brian is a husband, a father, a spiritual man because of a program of action that I'm involved in, being sober, a veteran, the two branches of the military, a brother, a friend, a son.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. So let's just go ahead and do a deep dive in.
Okay.
What was your childhood like?
Um, well, for many years, I would always say that my childhood was pretty normal for a kid from the inner city. But as with growing, coming into adulthood, maturity, some different types of therapy and research, uh, I've come to realize that it wasn't normal. I grew up in a single parent household. We lived with as a child. I lived with my mom. That early on, it was me and my two siblings, and then later it became my fourth, which is my youngest brother. And we stayed with my mom until I was about 5 or 6, and we moved in with my grandmother, and we stayed there for a few years, about 5 years, 6 years, and that was because my mother was addicted to drugs and going through some things in her own life. So my grandmother stepped in and brought my siblings and I into her home. She dropped her job, took us in, and we stayed with my grandma for a while, and then probably around 12, 13 years of age for myself, we moved back in with my mom. She had got clean, and then it was still, it was, to me, it was still the same. situation that I was in. Like, I didn't truly understand.
What did that feel like as a kid, with your childhood being fragmented? What did that feel like inside?
Um, inside, inside there were times of frustration and sadness. There were times of happiness as well. Like, I wouldn't want to pass it off like everything was bad. There were many questions like, why did we have to move away from mom? Why are we with grandma? And when we were with my grandmother, why were we? My grandmother was pretty young to be a grandmother. Um, why are all these people here? Because she had like my aunt come there with her kids, with their children, respectfully. Friends of the family. It felt different. My other friends had their parents at home. Most people who live with their grandparents, it was either like one or two things. Like, either your parents had passed away early or they were in the street. So, and for us, I don't know if it's just our culture itself, but it's not very common to tell a child that your mom's on drugs or you came to live with us because your mom has some issues.
Okay.
I'm
Wow.
a doctor.
Wow. It seems like there were challenges.
Yes, there were.
So who was Brian as a youth?
I would say Brian was an introvert. Today, I could say Brian was a follower. Like, he wanted to be a leader in his mind, but the fear of being in the in crowd at whatever stage of my life I was in, I was a follower. I was scared.
What were you afraid of?
Honestly, just being myself. Like, I don't believe that. I thought I knew I didn't always fit in, but I didn't know how to just be myself. So I was somewhat of a chameleon for the company that I was in.
Okay. What is your happiest memory as a child? You're breaking up. I kind of lost you. Are you there, Brian? Where I lost you for a moment.
My happiest memory as a child.
Yes. Brian, are you still with us?
I'm still with you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You kind of froze for a moment. But you're back.
Okay. My happiest memory as a child would either have to be one year our family went to like the New York auto show.
Okay, cool.
Because I've always loved cars. I believe I know it was my siblings and I believe it was my mom and my dad. Or it would be a holiday. One of the better holidays.
Okay, cool. The auto shows are cool. I kind of like cars, don't know much about them, but I just like them because they're pretty.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me one of your saddest moments as a child?
One of my saddest moments. We were living in North New Jersey, and often, coming up in the system, welfare, Medicaid, living government assistance, being on food stamps, things like that. But the neighborhood we lived in, they would have block parties, and my grandmother would barbecue, and it would be for the kids mostly, like the kids in the neighborhood. hamburgers and hot dogs. And I remember being in the driveway, and I saw a van pull up at the end of the driveway. My grandmother was a few feet behind me at the grill, and I remember freezing. Like I just couldn't move. I was glued to the ground. And my grandmother looked up, and she just started yelling my mother's name. And then she went to run down the driveway, and the van took off.
Wow. Wow. That had to have been hard.
It was pretty hard, but it was pretty hard. I would say that I'm a mama's boy, so even with my mom being out of my siblings and I's life for some time, I was always waiting for the day for my mom to come back.
Now, how long were you separated from your mother?
About 6 years. About 6 years living with my grandmother.
Okay.
Somewhere in the window of somewhere between 5 and 7 years.
Okay.
Just by the grade that I was in.
Okay. So going back to your mom, what was life like?
It was quite a different picture. The orientation of the family was different because at that time it was just my mom and my siblings and I, obviously. And I remember we first moved in. My mom was a superintendent for an apartment building.
Okay.
And she had an apartment downstairs. My mom had got clean, so she was changing the direction of her life. And she had a 1-bedroom apartment. So she had the 1 bedroom, and it's 2 sisters, my older sister, my younger sister, and then my younger brother, and I, and my mom, in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Wow.
And it wasn't like that for very long. It was a few months.
Okay.
But like my sister slept with my mom, me and my brother shared a couch. Or sometimes we would rotate the bedroom to the couches. The girls get the bedroom this week, boys get the couches, back and forth. It was different. My mom was we didn't go to church with my grandmother. Like I can remember almost never being in the church unless it was a wedding. Not even a funeral. I don't remember ever attending a funeral. And got back with my mom. She got clean. She got very devoted to her religious practice. So we were in church every day, nearly. Sometimes church 2-3 times a day. Morning service, afternoon service, evening service across town. My mom was a lot stricter than my grandmother. It was a difference.
So as a child and having to be subjected to these religious regiments, what was that like?
The religious part wasn't very hard to take on. Because when my mom got sober, she had some visitation with us for a little while. I can't remember how long. Like I could just, from the hip say it might have been about a year. It could have been longer, it could have been shorter. But we would go to church like, every other weekend with my mom. We'd spend the weekend with her. So by the time we moved in with my mother, the religious practice wasn't hard. It was still, but mentally, the church wasn't very different from school because we switched schools quite a bit growing up, just moving around the city, and then going into this church where the church that we went to was pretty much a pillar in our community, and there were a lot of youth there, and they had been there for some time, so this is just another place to fit in at, or to try to fit in. And outside of
Okay.
that, it was the schedule of church. That was a lot.
Okay. Yeah, you said you guys were there pretty much every day. So was there time for recreation? Was there family time?
Well, I would say there was time for myself. There were spats of recreation, I would say, because I had disciplinary issues. I had a rough, bad attitude. I was quiet sometimes, but I would get to school and I would lash out at teachers, or I would get in a fight, or I would just leave school. So, I might make the basketball team, but then my mom finds out that I haven't been to school in weeks, so she makes me quit the team. And if I wasn't at basketball practice, I was definitely gonna be at church, sitting next to my mother.
Okay. Sounds like your mom was a tough cookie. How's she doing today, by the way?
Today, today my mom, in my opinion, today my mom is doing amazing. Man, she's nearly 30 years sober. She's
Wow.
remarried. She has her own house, paid off vehicles, recently retired, spiritual, going to school, got a
Wow.
complete degree. So I would think
So,
that she's doing well.
so what kind of relationship do you have with your mom today? You've kind of left camera. What is your relationship with, yeah, what is your relationship with your mother today?
My relationship with my mother today is, I would say that it's great. I can have a conversation with my mother for 2 minutes, or I can turn around a couple days later and be on the phone for an hour. We can talk about life. We can talk about being sober. We can talk about the kids. Giving me some direction on being married.
That's great. That's great, Brian. So let's fast forward a bit. Um, as a young man, what was your life like? High school, moving into a young adulthood.
Um, high school was high school was high school. It was another place to try to fit in, to find your niche or your group, and like I had done many others, and all of my other previous years, I found the people that I fit in with, or I thought I fit in with. If that didn't work, I went on to another group. If that didn't work, I went on to another group. And I would say, like, at a younger age, I didn't really care for myself. Like, I didn't like me, because that it was, you had to be cool. You had to have nice clothes and nice sneakers, good haircuts, these type of things. And because of how our family was structured, we didn't always have that. And I remember one point in time talking to my mom, probably crying my eyes out, and she told me, one day you're gonna fall in love with yourself. And I can't remember when it was, but one day I showed up, and in my mind, I was Billy D. Williams.
Wow. 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 So as a young adult, like what did you do right after high school? Did you go to
Um,
school? Did you get a job? What did you do right after high school?
right after high school, I took a month off from between school and working, because I worked all throughout high school, and I joined the Air Force.
Okay.
In the Air Force for about three and a half years.
Okay. How was that?
It was another culture shock. It was different, because like growing up where we grew up at, once we got stable and not moving around all the time, or in the same school system. Um, I've made some friends. I had some close friends, people that today I call my brothers. Get into the military, and it was it was either like kind of like high school at points because of the immaturity of people, and then there were people who I would consider like disloyal or backstabbers. So and being around different races, living overseas. My first duty station was in England,
Okay.
so that was like, whoa, that was really really different. Moving
So
to a place like England.
yeah, so as an American young adult living in the UK, you said that there was a different culture. What do you mean? Can you expound?
As far as culture, there were, well, for one, being the man that I was, or the young man that I was, and coming from the city, I was pretty overconfident and cocky, and I stood on my ground about being from New Jersey. But then also being black and being American in England was a bit different. Like there were groups of people that you would be good with, and then groups of people that you would just not be good with. Like females, amazing. As a young man in England, amazing. Uh, the older crowd of people there, not always.
Okay.
Not always.
So you said you were in the Air Force for 3 years. What happened after that? What did you do with your life?
So I went from England to Texas, and in Texas I got married to, at that time, a woman that I thought was going to be the love of my life. I was in Texas, and they had a program that allowed people to get out because there were too many people in the Air Force. I applied for the program. My wife at the time was still in England. I applied to go into the program and found out that I could get an honorable discharge, and I got out and moved back to England.
Okay. Um, so where were you? Let's do another time skip. 5 years after that, where did you find your life?
5 years after that, we stayed in England for about 2 years, just over 2 years, came back to the States. My wife at the time had got out the military. 5 years later, I was in the Army.
Oh,
I was in Iraq by that time.
okay. Wow. So were you active? Were you active in the war? What was your role?
Well, in my first duty assignment, I was in a medical unit, and I wasn't a medic. I was a cook in the Army. So I would say ancillary to the unit, like I was a surplus or in addition to the company, because most of my unit was medic. So in Iraq, in the beginning, it was rough transition. You're hearing indirect fire, you're hearing mortar rounds going off, but it still wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad until like the first time I saw a body. I saw somebody fighting for their life. I saw an injured soldier. That's when things changed.
Wow.
Mentally.
Wow. That's a good segue, Brian, because our goal today is to talk about mental health. So you said things changed. Let's talk about that a little bit. How long were you in the Army, or are you still active?
Today I am retired from the military. I got medically retired about 2 years ago, so I'm retired.
And how long were you? Wow. How long were you in the Army?
I was in the Army just on the edge of 13 years, 12, 13 years, 12 years,
Wow.
12 years.
Wow. I'd like to say thank you for your service.
Thank you for yours.
Um, it's we say that, and a lot of times it's just kind of in passing, that our service members, we kind of say it, but in reality, our service members aren't honored the way they deserve. So I, heartfully want to say thank you for your service and protecting our country and protecting my freedom. Um, what Talk to me about, you said that things changed for you mentally, um, seeing combat or the results of combat. Let's talk about that.
Um, well, my second duty, well, my first deployment in the Air Force it wasn't combat, but my first deployment in the Army was in the line of combat. And it's a lot of isolation, like when you're deployed. There are times where you're just around everybody, you're never separate, but that nighttime, find yourself walking around or just sitting out somewhere, just seeking some sort of peace. But then going into my second deployment in the Army, I was on the gun crew, and we were security for convoys. Things started changing. Like, at times you could find yourself, you're always thinking about safety and the well-being of your team, but there also gets to a point where you kind of hate the enemy and find yourself like thinking about killing people. Or will somebody kill me tonight? Like, will today be the day that I lose my life?
Wow.
So you're on fear, but at the same time you feel inferior. You're a big bad American Army, so there were so many times it was back and forth.
So when your career ended with the military, what was your mental state, and how did you cope with your mental state? So that's kind of a two-part question. What was your mental state? Let's do that first.
My mental state when I got out the Army, initially, it was I was lost. I was honestly lost.
Why lost?
Because all I had really done was the military. So at this time, I'm 35. I'm 35, about to be 36. And since I was 17, I had been in the military mostly, or around the military. And I got medically retired because of my mental state, because of the effects of alcohol and PTSD. So now, by this time, I was sober. My wife deployed a month after I got out. So I'm somewhat of a single parent. I'm at home with our 3 boys. I'm going to counseling all the time. Like, I didn't know what I could do outside of being in the military. Like, outside of being in a uniform and preparing to fight or fighting, I didn't know what to do. I felt like a warrior without war.
What did the government do for you, and helping you with your mental state and helping you to adjust now? Again, you had been in the military from age 17. Now you find yourself 35. You're lost. What did the government do to help you to adjust to civilian life and the mental of that?
The VA, I got out, and the VA provided me with some counseling and some classes and some groups to go to. But it's a two-sided coin to that. It's very, if you don't speak up in a very stern manner, it's a closed mouths don't get fed type of situation. Like it's easy for you to not go, you go to like mandatory checkup. You might see a counselor twice a month. You might see a psychiatrist once every 3 months. They might put you in a group that you have to see once a week. But for many veterans like myself, that's not enough. Like it's not enough for me to go try to clear my head or figure out where my head is for an hour a week. And the rest of the day, my spouse is gone to work, my children are in school, so I'm just left in the house crazy. Like I'm depressed, I'm looking for something, trying to find hobbies. Hobbies don't work out, I'm angry. I put a lot of miles on my vehicle at that time when I could get outside.
So let's dive into the dark and ugly. Let's talk about a day when your mental state was the darkest. Let's talk about that.
A day when my mental state was the darkest. The darkest I would think was around July. It was July of 2018. I'm gonna say it was July 2nd. I had some issues going on with my immediate family, then my relationship, my career. I remember that weekend my grandmother was supposed to have her 70th birthday party, and for some home reasons I wasn't able to attend. And I woke up one day that weekend. I had been on a binge for that weekend as well. Like I remember going about 4 days drinking a half a gallon of alcohol a day to myself. No parties, no friends, no domino games, just Brian and the bottle and anger and sadness. And I remember waking up about the fourth day of that weekend. It was a Monday. And I had I planned to cause some harm to some people. Where it came from, it came from the sickness of my mind, the delusion that I had about how the world wronged me. And I decided that I was gonna hurt some other people, and then I was gonna hurt myself. That's probably the darkest time. I would likely say that's the darkest time. That's July 2nd, 2018.
What was the result? Well, we know that you did not harm yourself, but on that July 2nd day, what happened to transition and cause you to turn the corner? We lost your camera, Brian.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What caused me to turn the corner? One would be getting sober. What caused me to turn the corner was getting sober, or God allowing me to get sober.
Okay.
Yeah, there was at the time there was nothing between me and me. My mind was very much so at that time set on committing suicide.
Wow.
But God, some way, somehow, God intervened.
So today, where are you today? What steps are you taking to address your mental health and to ensure that you have some facsimile of a healthy mental state?
One, being sober. Being sober brought me to a place in a relationship with God that I had never had before. You know, that I never had before. I had a religious and traditional sense of what I thought God was because how I was raised, but my relationship with God is different today. So today, prayer, reading, meditation, going to counseling. I attend a lot of meetings, groups for the program that I'm in. Being a father, like there's, even with how much children just can be frustrating and at times disappointing because of their actions.
Yeah.
They can't be. My children bring a light to my life that I just think about, like my days of drinking and my days of pushing myself harder and harder in my military career that I missed. So,
what is your support network? Who does that consist of?
my support network would truly consist of a few. Well, first, I'm sorry. First, it would consist of my sober network that I have, like, my sponsor, my grant sponsor, the men that I sponsor, my home group. But immediate wise, or outside of that, it would be definitely my mom. I have a few very near and dear friends to me. And I say friends, that's important to me. That's very, very big. Like, I don't consider many people my friends. But there are a few men that I served with, deployed with, that I call my brothers. That's my support network.
So you talk about your home group. So are you a part of a 12-step program?
Yes, I am. I am a memory of, I said a memory, man. I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I do have a home group. I have a few commitments there that I've been privileged to have. Like, I didn't go out seeking them. The work that I put in and God allowed me to do allowed me to be available.
That's awesome, Brian. Now, if you were to speak to a brother today or a sister who is struggling with mental health issues, what would be your first admonition to you? What would you admonish them? Where would you admonish them to start?
I would, for me, telling them to find somewhere or someone that they can be honest with.
Okay.
My mental, the state of my mental state was very clouded, and mucked up because of how my perception of what the world was. I didn't have an honest outlook or understanding for what life was. I had the world that I built inside my head. So if I found someone that would that said they were dealing with some mental issues, I would first tell them to find somebody that they could be.
I can't hear you. Okay, you're back. Your sound is back.
Sorry. I would tell them to find someone that they can be honest with. It could be a counselor, a clergyman, a very understanding friend, maybe someone in the church, someone who has no dog in the fight. Now, I don't know if you would go to your mom's or your grandmother's pastor who's been there your whole life, or someone they can open up to.
Okay. So what is your family life like today?
Uh, Today, my family life is, I would say that it's a good family life, but it is, at times, it's it can be chaotic. It can be very busy. That's one thing it is. It's very busy. We live in Georgia, and my wife is from Georgia. She's about an hour away from where she grew up at, so she has a lot of family around here. We have three boys at home. My my daughter just moved in with us, my 14-year-old daughter, and I have another child. My youngest son, he lives not far. So there are times where there are four or five of our children in the home, and then whatever other family member wants to come by and say hello for a few days. So it's busy. You know, the boys all play sports constantly. They go from football to basketball, basketball to track, and then right back in that circle. It's very busy.
Sounds like you've got a house full of lettermen with all of those different sports.
Maybe one day we got one right now. He's a senior. He's getting
Wow.
letters for track and for football.
Wow, that's awesome. What is your marriage like today? Now that you are in a good place mentally, let's put a pin there. What was your marriage like during those dark days?
My marriage wasn't well. For one, I got married 3 months before I got sober. So prior to me getting sober, me and my wife were back together for about 4 years, maybe. And it was rough. There were times my drinking was pretty rough. I was back on the path of being promoted to the grade of to a senior grade in the military. So I was very constant at my unit. I would go to work leave the house at 4 or 5 in the morning and wouldn't come home at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and not have a problem doing that. But I was absent in the home. I got there. There were many days where I I likely was drinking on my way home. My relationship suffered a great deal before getting sober. It was a lot of poor communication. There wasn't much affection. Nothing consistent. There was no consistency. Like, you didn't know who you were coming home to with Brian, or you didn't know who would come home once I got there.
Right.
Like they say, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing.
So today, what is your marriage like today?
It's still a work in progress. There is love there. Working on communication. We're still early in our marriage. Like, we'll be married 4 years next month.
Okay.
But it's still growth. Both of us coming from getting married in our mid-30s, having previous relationships, me being previously married, expectations and demands, things that I'll never do, and things that, my last person or spouse, mate did that I just won't stand for, stubborn and attitude. So it's a work in progress. I love and appreciate my wife, but she get on my nerves 6 out of 7 days a week.
Well, listen. It sounds like you guys are doing some adulting there. That kind of sounds like adulting. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I would like to say that I would want to build a platform similar to yours. I would like to see first I would like to see, if I am around for another 5 years, I would like first to be sober. That's one of the most important things in my life. Secondly, I would like to see myself and some friends of mine building a platform similar to yours, but very devoted to the military community, whether they were active service members or spouses or children of service members.
That would be awesome.
Being a better parent, like I'm still learning how to be a parent because I was absent for so long. Being a better husband, a better citizen.
Well, it sounds like you are on the right path to bring those things to fruition. Before we leave, tell me, what are you doing today that, where could people find you? What are you doing today, Dave, that we could back you up in?
So today,
am I back?
Yes.
I'm sorry. So today, you can find me on social platforms, From the Foxhole on Instagram, one word. On TikTok, you can find me From the Foxhole 2021. On Facebook, there's a support group, From the Foxhole. It's a very simple image that is there to see. It looks somewhat like a T with two bars in the middle, which is the image of our brand. You can find me there. You can find me at my Facebook, just Brian Stout. Search me, and you'll see the same image from the Foxhole group. You can find me on email, brianstout1983 at Gmail, or From the Foxhole 2021 at Gmail. You can reach out anytime. Like, I'm always willing to talk to someone, to help someone if I can, to receive help. Anything to see people continue to stay on the face of this earth, because there were many years, for myself, there were many years I didn't want to be here. And it's a privilege to be of service to somebody else today.
Wow, Brian, that is absolutely awesome. And it's definitely been a privilege and an honor to have you on with us at A Soft Place to Land. Again, follow us and subscribe, like, share the platform to someone in need. We will be having these type of comprehensive conversations, things that are of today, what people are dealing with today. Again, we thank you for your time. We thank you for your service in this crazy world, in this crazy time. We need people like you who have been in the trenches and have lived in the foxhole and know what that really is about. Again, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day and make it a great day, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye for now.
All right. Be loved.